I think that President Zelensky is doing very well in order to push the reforms and to overcome this resistance.
Crimea is?
Крим – це Україна. There is no doubt, there is no question that Crimea was a Ukraine and Crimea is Ukraine and Crimea will be Ukraine.
You said recently that Putin is a killer. You would not take that.
The system, first of all, is a killer, and the situation or the system could be built, but the system could be removed too.
Can we expect that Ukraine can be a member of the EU until, let's say, I'm retired on pension? Or you?
Certainly. If you will become the pensioner, I think Ukraine will be a full-fledged member of European Union.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Recently you have visited Ukraine, and the document that you have proclaimed with President Zelensky says that Lithuania will back Ukrainian accession to the EU, doesn't it? What do you see as a result of this document? What does it mean in practical sense?
It means that we will be advocate of Ukraine in all issues which are related to the possible aspirations and application to become the full-fledged member of European Union in the future. But I would like to say that we signed, or at least the ministers of Lithuanian government signed the broad range of the documents covering various issues and cultural cooperation, also energy cooperation, also social policy issues. So it was really a very fruitful visit, and the document or joint declaration between the presidents was only one of the documents, of course very important. Very important for me personally, because I feel as a strong friend of Ukraine, and this is because of many reasons, historical ties, traditions. And I want to say that Ukrainian people should know that we feel the aspirations of the Ukrainian people very well. We feel the pain because of annexation of Crimea, and we feel also how complicated is the situation in Donbas region. So those messages, they are brought to Ukraine, and hopefully Ukrainian people and Ukrainian politicians understood that.
A recognition of the fact that Lithuania will support Ukrainian accession. It's not a new thing. Every single Lithuanian president said that. But what was the reason to sign that document right now?
I think this is important in the political sense of this word. And as Mr. President Vladimir Zelensky said, he would seek for the signing of such documents with all European Union member states. And it's an honor for Lithuania that Lithuanian president was the first in this line. So I think it's very important to show how strong are the efforts, aspirations of Ukraine to become the member of European Union. Although we see some problems, we see some unsolved issues in the country, and Lithuania, which collected a lot of experience in the process of integration into European Union, could be very firm and frank supporter, and probably could also help with some recommendations possible to share their expertise and to share the experience we collected during this period.
It is interesting to say that in Ukraine, a lot of people do not believe that the goal to join European Union is tangible. But you, a foreigner, do believe in that. What is the reason?
We believe, and I hope that Ukrainian society believes too. But it's very important not to get tired if this integration process will be very long. Again, I can switch back to the experience of my country, and it took 14 years since the regaining of our independence until the full-fledged membership in European Union in 2004. Since 1990 until 2004.
In Ukraine it takes much longer, already now.
Probably yes, but the reason why we are so successful, the society was united about this goal. And I don't recall the parties which were against our integration strategic goal. So maybe in your country there are different groups, maybe they are not very enthusiastic about this goal. So this is the reason why this path could be longer in your country. But again, I switch back to my initial idea. Don't get tired, because otherwise it will be very difficult to be consistent on this path and to achieve the final goal. To implement the reforms you envisage, you already done some initial reforms in the banking sector, in the land reform area. We welcome all these efforts, but we would like to say, please don't slow down, because slowing down means probably postponing of the strategic goal to the future.
I know that European politicians would like not to stick to any dates, but anyway, in 2027, Lithuania will be a chair in the Council of the EU. And also we have 2025 when Poland is a chair, and 2028 when Latvia is a chair. Can one of these dates be symbolic in terms of Ukrainian rapprochement to the EU?
Why not? Probably your question is very timely, and I think that if we will take the presidency over European Union, we could be very helpful in this regard, because probably only the few countries which were in post-Soviet, which are in post-Soviet area, they understand each other very well, and I think to have such support, it's very important. And we will use all the instruments as the presidency in the future to help our friends in Ukraine to achieve the strategic goal of the membership.
But as far as I understand, 2027 is too early to be a member. Well, to say it bluntly, it is impossible. What can happen in 2027? Perspective or else?
Yes, perspective sometimes it's even more important than the goal, because I see that the more clear is the perspective, there more is a motivation for certain nations to achieve the final goal. And if we will lose this goal, this orientation, sometimes it leads to confusing in the society and probably loss of the speed of the reforms. So this is the reason why we say that perspective and very clear timetable, agenda, it's important. And this is a task of European Union itself. Not only Ukraine has certain homework to do, but European Union should be very firm. European Union should send us very clear signals to the societies, not only Ukraine, but also Georgia, Sakartvelo, and Moldova, associated partners, in order to motivate the societies to go forward.
So you expect that 2027 can be a year when Ukraine will have official perspective of membership?
I don't want to guess. You know, it's possible, but I don't want to guess in this regard.
As you said, it is important to see at least some tangible possible results. Can we expect, let's try to guess that way, can we expect that Ukraine can be a member of the EU until, let's say, I'm retired on pension? Or you?
Certainly. If you will become the pensioner, I think Ukraine will be a full-fledged member of European Union. because it means that you have still 30 years. How much?
42. So, yeah.
Okay, maybe the rest of the period is less, but I think that it's possible to do in such time period.
Yeah. And until you are retired?
And until?
You are retired on pension?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. You focused in that document with Zelensky on the EU. Why EU, not NATO?
I think you have both goals, and those goals are of equal importance. The membership in NATO, it's important too, and maybe accidentally, but Lithuania entered the both organization in 2004. So we became the members of NATO and European Union at the same time. As I always want and like to say in this regard, European Union is for better life, NATO is for life. It means that NATO is extremely important for the security of the country. And of course, a membership in European Union means that we are able to implement certain reforms in very different areas of our public life, which just brought us some prosperity, increase of living standard, and I can express it in figures. For example, in 2003, right before our accession to European Union, GDP per capita in Lithuania was about 40% of European Union average. Now we have already 84% of European Union average, and all this time Lithuanian GDP grew very fast and exceeded the average growth of European Union as a region.
But let's try to analyze which of these organizations is more feasible for Ukraine in terms of membership. Is it more feasible to get a member of the EU or member of the NATO, given that we have territories occupied by Russia?
Yes, the situation is complicated, and probably not accidentally you have those conflicts in the east part of Ukraine. You have annexation of Crimea. The same is happening in other countries which are also candidates to become the members of NATO in the future. I mean Georgia, first of all. This is a factor which complicates the process, but it cannot stop the process. So the most important is you implement all the reforms which are needed, and you already succeeded in this area because, as I know, Ukraine is among only 6 countries which are the partners with enhanced opportunities. So this is a big step forward in the process of integration into NATO. And I think you have all the support and moral support too from the NATO members, and especially Lithuania. I know that we have specialists in Ukraine which are teaching, educating military personnel of Ukraine. And I think you have all the support from NATO's organization and from the concrete members of NATO to go forward and to achieve your goal.
You referred to reforms, so let's focus on them. What directions would you set as the most important to join both EU and NATO? What should Ukraine focus on?
As I mentioned, you already implemented very important reforms in the banking sector, and especially land reform. I remember the reform of land in Lithuania. It was very controversial. It brought a lot of discussion in our public media. Still, much should be done, especially in the area of judicial system. In the area of anti-corruption system, you have to support your anti-corruption organizations, institutions, to establish the sustainable framework of anti-corruption. And the central bank's independence is important too. I can say that as a former employee or the head of monetary policy departments of the central bank in my country. So the independence of the central bank from the government and the parliament, it's a precondition of monetary stability in the country. So in European Union, this is a very important factor which should be implemented.
It's not a surprise to me that Lithuania says that you see reforms in Ukraine, but you talk to other European countries. Do they also see that reforms are moving under Zelensky presidency, or they are rather saying that now they are slowing down?
You know, still we didn't have the comprehensive, detailed discussion on Ukrainian reforms, and I think we will have very good opportunity to discuss the speed and environment of reforms on July 7th and 8th. As you know, the Ukrainian Reform Conference will take place in Vilnius, in our capital, in July. And I think it will be a very good moment to discuss in very detailed way what is happening, what was achieved, and where are the problems. We understand very well that reforms are not easy process. Reforms always have some resistance. And sometimes the resistant forces or resistance power is very strong. And you should have certain commitment, certain willingness to implement reforms no matter what is happening. Sometimes it's extremely difficult, even in political sense, to achieve the majority in the parliament. We understand very well because we pass the same way in Lithuania too. But you should not lose the eagerness, the enthusiasm to implement those reforms, because what you already achieved, this is the past, and now we should concentrate our attention to the future.
Do you see that enthusiasm on Zelensky's side?
I think that President Zelensky is doing very well in order to push the reforms and to overcome this resistance. But sometimes it could mean some postponement of certain decisions, and hopefully President Zelensky will keep this commitment, very strong commitment, during the whole term in office.
Very shortly, as you referred to that reform conference, I hope that in July we will travel here. But do you see that Schengen borders will really be open for Ukrainians for travels this summer?
Again, you are asking the question which is very difficult to answer, because we cannot guess what will happen in pandemia area in 2 or 3 months. But as you know, the restrictions of non-necessary travel in European Union to the third countries, those restrictions were imposed because of very well-known reasons. First of all, the third wave in Europe. So maybe those restrictions will be removed, but it will depend on many factors, not only on the effectiveness of quarantine regime in different countries of European Union, but also on the implementation of green certificate, which probably will be introduced in June of this year, and also vaccination speed. Now all the countries are started to run this vaccination process, and Lithuania, as European Union too, has a very ambitious task to vaccinate 70% of our adult population until the mid of summer.
And then borders can be opened.
Then borders can be opened, but it will depend on the vaccination in
other countries.
Third countries too. It could be the obstacle. But I should not overestimate this factor, because if we are talking not about tourists, but about the official delegations, we have certain different regime applicable for those people and politicians.
Okay. Important question for Ukraine. Crimea is?
Крим – це Україна.
Thank you.
So for us, there is no doubt, there is no question that Crimea was a Ukraine, and Crimea is Ukraine, and Crimea will be Ukraine. I really appreciate and I welcome the idea of President Zelensky to establish non-recognition of Crimea occupation platform, which will start in August of this year. And if time schedule allows me, I would like to be there to participate in this event. And of course, I am looking forward to see Mr. President Zelensky in Vilnius in July.
By the way, your speech in Verkhovna Rada in Ukrainian was highly appreciated in Ukraine. I really thank you for that. Was it easy for you?
It was not so easy. You know, what my initial thinking was that it will be not very big job to perform, to hold my speech in Ukrainian. But as I realized a little bit later, it was not so easy job, and really I wanted to express my feelings, to express my sympathy. And I was really sure about it, that I can do it by performing, by holding my speech in Ukrainian. So I did it. I am happy, and hopefully the people understood what I wanted to say.
Absolutely. And you already catch some phrases in Ukrainian, do you?
Yes, and you know, if we are talking about understanding of the language, yes, I understand about maybe 30-40% of the text, because sometimes I'm watching such channels like Вечерний квартал.
Oh, really?
Really, sometimes, because I like the good humor, and this is interesting for me. And sometimes those channels are in Ukrainian language, as I understand.
So let's test. I say, Україна та Литва навіки разом.
Ukraine is Lithuania, but I didn't...
Навіки разом. Forever together. But
forever together.
Yeah, but it is still.
Good, good. So you see that about 30% of the text.
Your country has unique experience. You have been under occupation and illegal annexation for 50 years. And I would say that this experience can also teach Ukraine. 50 years is probably too much. What can be done to make this term shorter, or it's rather impossible?
I think Lithuanian nation is a very brave nation, and of course we experienced a lot of turbulences in our rich history, but I would like to remind you that we have common history with Ukrainian nation. We have common personalities, famous personalities in the past, which are equally important for Ukraine and for Lithuania. For example, Konstantin Ostrovsky or Jan Karol Chodkiewicz. So those heroes are really very important for both nations. And I think that the spirit of your nation is similar to the spirit of my nation. You are a larger nation. You, of course, have very big size of the country. But the spirit is the same, and spirit does not have anything to do with the size of the country. This is, first of all, the feeling of the people, aspirations of the people, and Lithuanian people, all the time they wanted to be independent. They wanted to create their life themselves. And this is the reason why we became independent, why we are quite successful in implementing reforms and making the life for the people better.
There is a kind of discussion in the EU what can be done with Russia. I see that some switch to raise the Navalny case, and Ukraine can be set aside.
It depends. Sometimes really actual news, they overshadow some other factors, but it shouldn't be misleading. I think that Ukraine is still in our hearts, and we are talking about the situation in Ukraine. And I think this broad understanding in European Union, or at least among European leaders, that you cannot have impact on the pattern of behavior of the Russia without sanctions. And those sanctions are doing their work and they having the effect, but we should to continue this policy, because otherwise to impact the behavior of Russia will be extremely difficult. And now we have the situation in eastern Ukraine, and I mentioned already that this situation is deteriorating, and this is not because of the Ukrainian side. This is because of Russia's activities. And you cannot reach the compromise or reach the consensus if one of the sides, one of the parties don't want to reach it. So as I want to stress that Russia is not mediator in this conflict. Russia is the party of this conflict. So nobody imposes the sanctions on mediator, yes? And the sanctions were imposed. Why? Everybody knows why.
Do you think that solving Donbas conflict is feasible, given that Russia do not want to leave Donbas? Russia wants to have Donbas to destabilize Ukraine. The only reason, correct?
Yes, and this is the case, but I believe that situation may change not only in Ukrainian-Russia relations area, but situation may change also in Russia itself. Political situation, I mean. And this is a matter of time, I think. And if the situation in Russia will improve, and we see a lot of problems there, violations of human rights, persecutions of human rights defenders, so a lot of internal problems, but the situation can change, and if it will change, there will be more room to find the solutions also in eastern Ukrainian area.
You said recently that Putin is a killer. You would not take that.
The system, first of all, is a killer, and this system was created in last 20 years. So this is my answer.
So you think that if a person is changed, system can change? Because I think it's so deeply rooted in Russian society as well.
But it was not the case 25 years ago, during the Boris Yeltsin era. And it was created very continuously, and now we have certain situation, and we take it as granted. But it's false impression. I think the situation or the system could be built, but the system could be removed too. Maybe it will take time, and very long time, but it is possible. But of course it depends on the changes in Russia.
And to finish, what key messages would you send to Ukrainian people?
We came as friends. We feel big sympathy to your nation. We feel the pain of your nation, and we will be always friends of Ukrainian people.
And the EU in whole as well? Or?
Yes, I think we will bring this message to European Union, and we will try to sensibilize the European Union countries to watch what is happening in Ukraine, and to be aware what is happening there. So this is our main obligation, our main task, and we will do our best in order to achieve it.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you very much.